Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Tales from a Professional Nerd. My name is Bryan CP Steele, and I will be your nerd today. So let's do a real quick your week in Bryan CP Steele life before we get on to the program. So I've got to say, this has been kind of a hectic week. Between several kind of deadlines all kind of crashing in together at once. One of my online games taking place on a busy day that I wish I could shunt it, but I can't. And just commission work coming in all at once, and it's been kind of a crazy week. My stepdaughter is coming back from her extended stay with her dad this weekend, so I'll be on dad point more than I have been the last couple weeks. It's crazy, It's just it's been nutty. Highlight is that I've made some very cool things for the Kickstarter that is currently going, the Book of Monstrous Might. With Total Party Kill Games. I'll put the Kickstarter address in the description. You definitely should take a look at that, because there's really cool stuff in there. We're blowing through stretch goals like they're going out of style. So who knows what'll be the next that gets unlocked. But I'm almost done with my portion of writing that book, or writing my portion of that book, if that makes any sense. I'm still slugging away on the Shadowrun novel. Looks like I might actually be doing a little bit more Shadowrun role-playing game work in the near future. Plus, started putting words down on the new Spycraft. It's been like I said, it's been a crazy week, and it's going to be a crazy next couple of weeks or months, as the case may be. But overall, it's as it is. I love what I do. I love the kind of reaction that I get from the kind of the feel of anytime that I finish something, I always feel really good about it. You'll note that that it's darker in my studio right now because I actually don't have the light on. It's getting late in the day for recording, but I've been just too busy to record during the day. But yeah, so I wish I could say that it's, I wish I could blame something and be like, oh man, there's so like me. I like to try and stay positive. I don't want to cast dispersions on anything, but I do this to myself. There's no question at all. I do this to myself. I book all the commissions I can. I get all the freelance work. When one of my employers or one of the companies that I have on retainer, or that have me on retainer, reaches out and be like, hey, can you do a few thousand words on this? I very rarely ever say that I can't, just for the sheer fact that, A, it gets me paid, and B, it makes me a very dependable freelancer for those companies out there who are paying attention. Let's see, what else? Earlier this week, or maybe late last week, I don't remember. My boss / partner in crime on the Warzone project, Alex Knaus, was a guest speaker on the Warzone Chronicles, a Spanish YouTube channel. I mean, it's not in Spanish, but it's held by Alfie Warzone himself, who so he did a big Q&A, and it was really cool. You know me, I love being involved in that kind of stuff, but it was also neat to basically be on the outside, not putting my 2 cents in, and hearing what the guys had to say, and hear what Alex had to say. Yeah, so it was a good, earlier this week, you got a good chunk of that. I found a couple of other role playing online like streaming or online recorded role playing games that I'm going to start watching when I'm working and stuff to kind of keep my juices flowing. I actually found them through TikTok, through the D&D fam is what they call themselves collectively. I guess we call ourselves. I don't know. But either way, there's a couple of those that have gone online that I want to watch, not only for my own just like entertainment value, but it might be nice to see what some other streamers, some other amateur streamers do with their games, to see, if maybe I'm missing out on something, or see if there's something cool that I might go, oh, that'd be cool for the Arcane Promise. I know a lot of people care. I don't necessarily care as much, but Critical Role is back tonight after their giant hiatus because of the virus. I don't know how they're doing it, if they're going to be all at the same table or if they're going to be social distanced, or I have no idea. I'm sure we'll find out, as everybody and their brother is going to be talking about it on TikTok and otherwise tomorrow. Yeah, so I mean, like, I don't want to. I don't. Again, I'm not going to erase your time and be like blah 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 blah. But yeah, it's just been a lot of work stuff going on with me, probably more than the average person should do at one time. But I've got employers, and I want them to stay happy with me, and I want them to be able to trust when I say I can get stuff done. So I'll make it happen. I do want to note that one of my employers, Big Child Creatives, they just launched a Kickstarter. When you guys see this, it'll be yesterday, but it's today, for their kind of a re-envisionment of like the Knights of Camelot art busts. They're like 70 millimeter figs. They're gorgeous, and it funded in like 11 minutes or 14 minutes or 41 minutes or something like that. It funded really fast. So I'll put that address in the description too. If you're into painting larger scale figures, especially really, really detailed, gorgeous models, check it out. It's totally worth throwing them some bucks and get some fancy cool stuff directly from the source, so to speak. But yeah, so other than that, it's just been working for us video gamers out there. If you're into Fallout 67, Fallout 76, I know on the Xbox they just did a big update that added this kind of neat sort of board game feel daily track that you've got to try and go up these levels for like an entire season, like 10-week long season. It gives you a reason to do all the little goofy quests that, I know if you're high level like I am in that game, a lot of times it'll be like, this quest is starting, and you're like, I would rather not waste 8 minutes of my life doing that stupid thing. But now there's like lots of reasons for you to do these little things, because it scores all these little points to move your marker up this board game track that's part of the game now, and then you earn cool achievements and special things along the way. So that's pretty fun. If you play Fallout 76, you're going to want to get on that. And if you play Fallout 76 on the Xbox, look for me. My Xbox handle is Bryan CP Steele. I know that shocks you. Actually, I don't think there's a CP. I think it's just Bryan Steele. But I'm easily recognizable. Hit me up. We'll blow some stuff up together. That might be fun. So if you'll note by the thumbnail and the opening board of the video, I mentioned it last week. The laptop is back. It is working. It's better than ever, thanks to our friend out in Arizona, Russell. But tonight we are gonna go ahead and, as a celebration of not only the laptop being back, but also as a celebration of 40K taking a seemingly a more narrative bend in their game. Instead of, tournament, it sounds like it's going to be narrative, and tournament friendly. Which is exactly where I like to be. Super psyched. So in celebration of 40K being awesome, or new 40K looking like it's going to be awesome, me having a whole bunch of things to paint for commission work, and the laptop being back up and running again, it's time for, that's right, another hobby episode. So I'm going to pop over there. I'm going to see if I can't get my dual camera rig set up, see if that'll work. If I can't get the dual rig set up, it'll just be the one. You'll just be looking at me, sorry, or looking at my model, whatever I'm working on. But either way, we're going to spend some time today just having a good time putting some brush to paint, brush to model, brush to paint and then paint to model, and just kind of having a good time and enjoy this episode of Bryan wanting to show you that sometimes the hobby is not only a job, but it is also a way to relax. So, hobby time is story time. Part 2, 3, 7. I don't know. I don't even know what this is. But either way, celebration hobby time. Let's go ahead and get this started. I'll see you in a sec. Alright, so you'll note that I don't have a camera-in-camera action going on. And that is sadly because my new secondary webcam does not like to talk to my primary webcam over here in the hobby area. So until I get a second Logitech webcam to do specifically with the hobby rig, we have to do in kind of segment bits and bobs, and you'll basically get, this is me talking to the actual just like laptop camera, and then here in a second I will move it to the overhead camera, and then we'll get painting. So again, sorry for the technical snafus. I don't have the extra fundage to grab a secondary Logitech at the moment, so we'll see how that goes, and we'll see you in a minute. I mean, not really a minute. I wanted to make sure that you knew what was going on. So today, I think what we're going to do is, let me grab some of the little commission guys. I'm going to work a little bit on one of my models, but then also on some commission fellas. So these guys are the MeGo Assault Troops and MeGos with radiation lasers or whatever, from Dust 1947. And they normally sit on little flying bases as they flit around the battlefield doing horrible things to their enemies. So I'm going to get them base coated. They're already primed. The Dust people as a company, they have this primer already built into the actual plastic. And these are cool models. I mean, there's a lot of weird stuff going on. The plastic is bendy enough that I'll be able to get in there and paint how I want them. And if I really was feeling froggy, I would use like a heat gun to actually bend the model and keep it that way. But I want some of them to have their closed wings, and some of them have open wings, and some of them have this big, big wingspan to be able to see some pretty cool detail in there. But that's not what's going to happen initially. Initially, they're just going to get base coated. But models like this, I do their flight bases first, because it allows me to basically completely finish the flight base before I move on to the models themselves, or when the model gets to past the base coat point where I'm no longer going to be washing it or anything like that that'll drip down onto the base, is I can get this to a point where the base is never really going to be at risk from any of this paint. So I'm going to finish the bases
before I really get into the Migos themselves. Also, you'll note I'm using this kind of plastic, it's totally a mess, because apparently I don't have any of my, I'm all out of wet palette paper, so I don't have any of that lying around, so no wet palette for me today. I'm just going to have to limit myself to what I'm doing and be very careful not to jam up my brushes and stuff. And then the other thing, if I get time to do it a little bit today, so I've got the base coat on my Tesseract arc, which, by the way, thank you to the viewer who wishes not to be named, who let me know of the store in Jersey that had this. Tell you a little fun fact. Basically, after the Seraptech, which was the big Giganto model that one of you amazing viewers hooked me up with last summer. While I was painting that, or something, I remember talking to somebody about the fact that the only model aside from special characters, because I don't really field special characters in my my 40K stuff, the only special model that or the only model I really didn't have was the Forge World Tesseract arc. And that was because it was out of print for a while. It's kind of expensive. It's Forge World. So, I generally don't buy a lot of Forge World just, willy-nilly. So one of the viewers got in touch with me and said, hey, my local store in Jersey, I know before the whole quarantine shutdown, they had one behind the counter, and they had one behind the counter, and it was broken. It was missing some parts, or some parts were shattered, or whatever. And because I'm also a sculptor, they went ahead and said, hey, do you mind if I get a hold of that store and find out how much they'll sell it for? Well, I'm not going to name any names because some of these parts I think may have been aftermarket parts. But either way, it took them a few months to get it to me, but for dramatically less than what the actual Forge World, like ordering it straight from them, would have cost. I got a broken kit from this store, and then I had to do some patchwork to it. I had to do some putty and some plastic art here and there. But overall, after I've primed it now, and of course when it ends up getting completely painted, it'll look great. But I with you viewers' help, I managed to get a hold of a Tesseract arc. So now, up until, again, not including special characters, because I don't count those, up until we get our new stuff in the Indominus box, the new 9th edition box, I will have every model currently in the Necron range in my army painted. So like, I'm super psyched about that. And I got this thing base coated, and then I set it down to do a bunch of commission work because I can't bring myself to take away from commission work to work on something that's my own. So until I get a little more caught up on these commissions, I am going to have to just basically sit here and have him stare at me, looking at me longingly from the inside of his death chair. So what I'm doing right now, before I start actually priming or base coating these Migos, is I'm going to go ahead and finish these bases. So people who have never used Flock to finish their bases before, it's unlikely, but it happens, it's pretty simple. Now, dust bases have got these weird little rivet spots in them to give them character. I don't fill that with glue or anything like that. I actually paint them on when I finish the base, and possibly tonight. Oh, my glue's all jammed up. And possibly tonight, maybe you'll get to even see some of that. But so what I had already done is I had already painted the base on here, and added some, one of the technical paints from GW, added some Agrellan Badland, which is basically just kind of a muddy glue. and I use that to give. So my client wants all his guys to be in kind of a desert, but all sand on your on a flocked base is really boring. It is a an absolute just, it's like, oh, okay. Even if you add some like ink shading to it or something like that, it's still just really boring. So I added some of that technical paint as kind of like, muddy hillocks, or just a rise in the ground. Not even a desert area might have rocks, and it helps make the bases stand out a little bit. And in the case of these flight bases, I had more than one that was a little loose in its binding. So what I did is let's grab one of those so you can show you. What I did is I did the technical glue stuff kind of all around the flight post to help hold it together just even a little bit more. I'm sure if these guys take a spill or something along those lines, like somebody falls off a table or something, or somebody's being crazy and drops a beer can on them or something, then I'm sure that'll be the end of the flight base. But for just general storage and handling, I think that this helps at least a little bit. But yeah, so what I'm just going to use this Elmer's glue, put a couple drops in the open spaces, and then use this toothpick to smooth it around so it's not all just bubbled up in one spot, but also to help cover up as much of the empty part of the base as possible. And I set the toothpick down. In this case, they come with their own little handle. I just basically put it in the flock, give it a little spin, tap it a couple times, and then using my thumb, I'll wipe off the excess, because I'm still going to do the victory lap around the bases when this glue is dry. Now, you're probably wondering, unless you do this for a living and you're just doing this or you do this a lot and you're just humoring me, is why did I paint the base if I'm going to cover the whole thing with flock anyway? Well, it's a good question, because depending on the kind of flock, I might not. If it was like a very dense green foliage, like ground up sponges or something like that, like something that was very thick, I might base coat it, or I might just basically use enough of the flock to cover up everything there. Now, in this instance, I'm using this pale sand. If the base would have been that same brown color, or that same kind of purplish color, when I put this on, we all know how Elmer's glue dries pretty clear, and if it's a thin coat of sand, of the sand flock, you're going to be able to see that purple straight through, and it's going to make the sand look weird. It's going to make your base look weird, especially if it's not an even coat. Like if you didn't do, this one has more sand on it than the next one. One of your bases has that purple shining through really just out there, everyone can see it. Or is it they see, just stick my finger in there, or they're going to see something and go, oh great, all of my sands are turning purple because the flock that I used is very thin, or something along those lines. So I always paint the base first and then give it a flock. And if I was using multiple types of flock, like if I wanted to add some static grass to some of these, which I probably will for like a character, is I'll leave a section blank where I think that static grass is going to look the best, or whatnot, because I don't want the static grass to have to adhere to the sand, because what that does is that actually just creates more of a spot of the flock where it could basically get pulled up, where it's yeah, it is glue, but at the end of the day, it's still just Elmer's glue. or PVA glue. Which the reason for that, by the way, is there are things that I've based with their flock using using super glue, but I generally don't because it's so permanent, and a lot of flock, if it's is thin and oops, brush. Oh no! One of the Migos took a splattering. Sorry, guy. Gross. Oh, it's because my glue is dripping everywhere. Gross. He says again. What was I saying? I was talking about. I seriously, I totally lost my train of thought because the Migo. Oh well. Yeah, no, I think finishing bases are it is in and of itself a bit of an art and definitely part of the hobby. I like doing narrative style things on my bases to a certain degree. I'm very weird about, like, if a model comes with a very elaborate, scenic base, and on that scenic base there's two dead warriors from an opposing army, and you're standing on the edge of a giant boulder overlooking these dead guys you just killed. I think that is an awesome diorama, but I've never cared for it for play pieces. And honestly, the biggest part of me, the reason why, is because you're not gonna bring those corpses with you in every single game. You're not always playing chaos. You're not always playing the people who have corpses there. I think the biggest offender in that of that kind of model sensibility, in my opinion, is actually a lot of the epic warcasters for Privateer Press. They specifically, the one that stands out for me, that I remember when I saw the model for the first time and was like, "Are you joking me?" is like Epic Level 2 Scar, the Pirate Queen. She's always been a Pirate Queen, and it's been fine because she dresses like a pirate, and all of her stories have her being a pirate. So it's really easy to know who that person is and what they're capable of. You didn't have to, as we saw with the model, have her attached to a critter, or rather not a critter, the bow of a ship. So everywhere she went, everywhere you fielded her, she was standing on the bow of a ship. And while there are a lot of models that will have I brought my ballerina rock with me, or, this little tiny piece of rubble, that's staying with me at all times, I get that to a certain extent. But to literally have half of a bow of a boat on your base everywhere you go, and the chances of you the chances of you having those models actually fighting on a boat skirmish, slim to none. I've never liked it. I've never cared for it. Alright, so what do we got here? Got the Migo. Migos have these wings. They've got kind of like a spindly fly body. And got like legs, little pokey legs. Alright. And then the gun, which the gun I'll just prime, or I'll just paint black initially, and then it looks like it's going to be a lot of like metallic gold and things like that. I just got to figure out what I'm going to do with the rest of these guys. They've got body segments, so part of me was thinking about painting them like wasps, but they don't really. They've got a gun, they don't really sting, and the ones that are close combat, they have these like fungus-bearing forearms that they shake at people and throw spores at them. So it is what it is, but it is weird. Yeah, so let's go ahead and do base coats on these guys. All right, who we want on these guys? Could be give them bright green hair, but when they take to the wing, you think that it's one of the scorch beasts or something. I don't know. I have no idea. I asked the client what he wanted. And he just wanted them to be that they pop out. You know, that they are out there, that people recognize them. So I think it might just be kind of a random like a random draw. You know, take a look at what paints I've got available and just sort of throw down. Let's see. What's a good scary insect color that isn't gonna clash with Cthulhu or the avatar of Nyarlathotep, who turned out really well, by the way. Might as well show him off. I did a conversion on him, cut a chunk of his throat out, and heat bent the head down, and then epoxied it shut, and then heat bent the lips out, so he actually looks like he's kind of like almost lip smacking Stranger Things style. Turned out really, really good. So I'm happy with that. Client's happy with that. Therefore, I'm happy with that. All right. Let's. Gosh, I kind of want these guys to be like ridiculous colored, like their wing skin bright purple or something, and like maybe put some speckles on there, or maybe you know what? I probably can make them like a light blue. Or a dark blue, maybe? Man, you just don't know. I don't know what I want to do. I'm not like utterly inspired by these creepo guys, but I also don't hate them. Like, they're cool models, and that makes all the world of difference. Yeah, I think we're gonna go with blue under, like blue skin parts, probably black armor plating. Yeah. So let's get that blue out. Let's see, is this the blue I'm going to use? It was awfully thin. I think we're going to use the crystal blue. No, that one's pretty bad too. No, stormy blue it is. So we're put out some stormy blue, and then I'm just going to slather that on these guys because it's going to be their primary color. Alright, get one of my darker base coat brushes. Alright, let's do this. Now, during this process, I guarantee I am going to get a ton of paint on my fingers. It is what it is. I will have paint fingers. I could put these guys on like toothpicks or something, or some kind of prop using just almost gonna call it a butthole, using their little flight peg hole. But I don't really have any decent ones, and one of them, even if I only had one, I would have to like basically take it off, move it to the next one. So I'm just gonna go ahead and try and get some of this base coat on here, lickety split, and not even think about it. Again, my goal is to hopefully get this to the point where I can put them on those flight stands and then use the flight stand to carry them while they're being painted. There's a lot to it, you know. There's a lot to the. It's not even just the science of painting. There's just a lot to getting yourself ready to do the painting. You know, whether it's researching paint schemes or, I'm gonna get blue over. You know, whether or not you're researching paint schemes, or checking out what you have in your inventory to see what, how many of these guys could he possibly ask me to do, and would I run out of a paint halfway before doing it. There's just a lot going on, and overall, I think most of his fans, I think I just had an audio blip there. Everything went a little wacky with my microphone. I hate it. I'm telling you, I need to get a new Logitech. Because when I was doing the Logitech window, it worked perfectly. Oh well. So, totally on topic of the week. So yeah, while we're sitting here getting this painting done, I'm going to talk a little bit about the upcoming 40K changes. This weekend we're supposed to see like our first streamed 9th edition game from the actual Games Workshop folks. One of the like tabletop art or tabletop artists or something. They're doing their first game of it tonight. Which they're going to Twitch or stream or something. Basically, we're going to start seeing some feedback from 9th edition that isn't just I hate it, it's not my old game. Because as gamers, we are pretty quick to jump to that call. Which isn't great. Oh man. Blue, getting blue all over my hands. That's okay. But yeah, so these little Migos, I think I fought them once with my Spetsnaz forces, and the little guys that have the close combat spores, they're all right. They run up, they do some damage, and then you almost always kill them. But the ones that have these beams, those you got to watch out for. You got to watch out for how that just barrels through cover, makes mincemeat out of light infantry guys, and even some small vehicles. So there's that. The client who's having me paint these is someone who I actually play quite a bit, like for fun. So it'll be nice to see my models on the battlefield. It will not be nice seeing my models killing my models. When it comes to painting something, and a part of your soul goes into it, kind of thing. So I'm painting all these cats for Kaimeg, or for my client. Just totally gave his name. And the goal is for them to look awesome on the table, except I'm going to sit down on the table, or at the table with these sometime, and they're not going to be, I'm going to be facing down my own paint jobs. And I'll be like, oh, that's intimidating. But, he's a client. I can't complain. If he wants to do a particular type of thing with his guys, who am I to get in the way of that? No one. That's you. All right. But yeah, so 9th edition 40K really looks pretty solid. They're upping kind of the number of command points that people get. Which, if you've ever heard me go on about command points, I actually do not like them in the game. I do not like having a cost for things that should just be tactical, or something that is a cost that will take away from my ability to field the better army, that sort of thing, just because they need to be part of the force too. So I'm hoping that the new battalion rules and all that stuff, people figure it out quick. They don't throw too much of a hissy fit about it, and we move on to start playing cool games, because that's what it's all about. It's playing games and having a good time. So, and right now, I feel, honestly, doing all this base coding of client stuff for Dust, I almost kind of feel like there must be a Dust event coming up soon, and we need to have our armies ready. But that's not the case, because I have like one model painted for my Dust Force. Just I can't. I don't have time to dedicate to them. Eventually, I'll deal with the fact that I have a bunch of stuff that's not painted, and it'll make me crazy, and I won't have any commissions on at the time, and I'll just flip out and be like, I'm gonna paint these guys right now, and it might not be the best paint job ever, but they'll get painted, and I'll point it out to everybody who I play, and be like, haha, I'm not the great army anymore. I was actually talking to friends of mine today. One of the things in 9th edition, this is actually totally comment worthy and totally conversation worthy, while I'm getting these base codes down, is apparently there is a rule in the new 9th edition 40k that during the end part of the game, where you're scoring who wins and who loses, that there is a possibility of getting 90 points based off of objectives and merit, and did your guy kill this guy, did your guy kill the other warlord, did you hold your mission, like there's all these, you can basically get a total of 90 points, and that if you fielded a fully painted army, you'd get that extra 10 points to bring you up to 100, or 10 higher from wherever you were. And while I am the first person to admit I hate playing with non-painted figures, and I hate playing against non-painted figures. I feel that it shows a kind of, not a lack of respect for your opponent, but it's very much the, I don't really care about the narrative or what they look like. These are all just basically chess pawns to me. And while there is nothing wrong with that mentality, you are playing a game. There is so much story, and there's so much like fun hobby time like this when you're playing these games to get the most out of your models. It's kind of nice to have hobby time. And while I get that, and that's my takeaway from things most of the time, it does kind of bother me that they're going to penalize players from getting a perfect score in their games because they didn't paint their models. And this bothers me for two reasons. One, because it adds to the pay-to-win aspect. You could have somebody who has never picked up a paintbrush in their life, but if they have a decent job, they can pay someone like me to paint their army for them, and that is basically that's them buying 10 points of every one of their games. They are writing a check for 10 points in their tournament, and that's I disagree with that. I disagree with people paying their way towards victory. And even though it's only 10 points, and I'm sure if they're having a terrible game, that's not really going to save them. But if you had two identical players who both of them played the hell out of their game, and one paid to have his army painted, and the other guy is taking the time to paint his painstakingly, like he's going through it bit by bit, and putting all the love into it, that means that guy who paid to have his army painted, even if he had his army painted paid to have his army painted badly, he still paid someone to get it done, to buy him those 10 points. And I don't like that. Like, again, I understand GW wants to push the hobby. They are also a hobby store. They're also a hobby supply shop. They've got entire catalogs full of hobby supplies. I get that, But what I don't understand is how you would want to alienate some players by basically saying you can't get a maximum score unless you either pay someone to paint your models or you suck it up and learn to paint. And because, I don't know about you, but there is a part of me that's like, I would rather see half of a well-painted force than a fully painted force that was done badly. And that's not me knocking somebody's painting skill, because if they're trying, they're doing better than the person who doesn't lift a brush. But what it does mean is they might be in a situation where suddenly they get hit, and they take a giant hit to their self-esteem because they wanted to be able to play their game fully, and they're an awesome general. They're a great tactician, and they do an amazing job of playing the game itself. But then, because they don't want to pay for someone else to paint their figs, they do it themselves, and it doesn't turn out fabulous. It's not as pretty as the next guys, or maybe they didn't have the right kinds of paint, so things get a little wonky because they have never taken a painting course or anything like that. It leaves people open to be bad to each other, in my opinion, and making it a blanket rule and just a straight up, you must do this to be able to get a perfect score, is also going to lead to whatever the minimum paint job is to get those 10 points. You're going to see quite a few people that, if they're not into painting, and if they want to take a stand against this whole painting for points idea, they're going to do the absolute bare minimum that it takes based off of whatever rubric the GW is going by. So if GW says no primer showing, got to be at least 3 colors, whatever. If someone wanted to do that, they could do what I'm doing here. Paint the whole thing one color, and then basically take 2 specks of paint, 2 globs, and go bloop, bloop, 1 on each wing. All right, they're battle ready. And they're going to look terrible. They're going to look worse than Bear Gray Metal on the field. They're going to look sloppy, and purposefully sloppy. Like, not just, oh, this didn't turn out right, sloppy. It's going to be, no, these are badly painted because the person just doesn't care and is making a statement of, well, I'm scoring these 10 points, and the one dude who puts hundreds of hours into his army because he's not done yet, he doesn't get those points. And I just think it sets a very weird precedent. And I'm hoping, because we haven't actually seen the full rule book yet, I'm hoping that that's in like the alternate alternate scoring rules for tournaments or something like that, like where it's not just this is part of the game. It is an actual like an alternate rule or a house rule or maybe in the section that talks about hobbies, like, hey, if you want to really instill your group to get some hobby stuff done, this is what you can do. And then most people will ignore it. I just don't like the idea of, we've mentioned it before, gatekeeping in games is wrong. And if that gatekeeping, the only reason why someone should not be able to play the game, if they want to, and they haven't been like kicked out of a tournament or something like that, is if they currently do not have any materials to play. Like, they just don't have any models, or they don't have, their stuff's not with them, or something like that. That should really be the only thing that keeps you from playing the game, is that if you don't have the game to play. And that's kind of my take on that whole 10 points thing. I think that's, and I know a lot of people in some of the Facebook groups are being like, well, it's just 10 points, and that's not a big deal. That's like one round of holding an objective. But whether that's the case, making it so tiny and barely worth anything, but still there, is almost as bad as making it like a major point scorer. Because now, if it's if it's down to the wire, like you played a neck and neck game, the whole time you and your opponent are just sweating it out and back and forth and taking objectives from each other, and just a really gnarly game, and you lose because one of your new models, or like the squad that just came out a couple weeks ago, you didn't get a chance to paint it before the game. And so now your tactically sound, awesome game that you played with this guy turns out to be a loss because you didn't have enough time to get your models painted, and he did. That's really all I'm going to say about that. I think that there's two. I absolutely love the idea of telling people, hey, try and paint your figures. The hobby is important, especially if you're going to play in public places. I'm super down with that. What I'm not down with is looking at somebody and saying, if you don't do this, your game is penalized. Because I think that that's just ugly and wrong. So, let's see, what else did we learn from New 40K? Sounds like we're going to see, so the last couple of editions, the regular trooper was king. The baseline grunt fella. If you had a lot of them and they were a decent price as far as like points, you could really depend on them doing a lot of work during a game. And a lot of times you would look at your army's new codex or whatever, and you see in there that there's these new troops that you're like, oh, okay, those are cool, I'll give those a try once, and they're always end up being a little more expensive or something along those lines. And then you go back to fielding the same olds because they're, point wise, they weren't, they just, if I could have 13 warriors instead of 6, or 7 immortals, the immortals might have cool guns and stuff, but having the extra bodies and the extra weight to be able to flow around, the extra dice when we're shooting, that's just a better deal. That's changed now because one of the things that they're doing in 40K, which I like because it actually reminds me a lot of the advantage and disadvantage rule from D&D, is a die can only have a modifier of plus or minus 1. Or obviously, or 0. So that means if you want, you can stack up all kinds of bonuses on your model, just like a pile of bonuses, but you're only going to get plus 1 to the, you're only going to end up getting a net plus 1. You're just stacking up those bonuses to keep someone else's negatives in check. Basically, you're like on a slide roll. It's, do you have a plus 1? Yes. You do? Okay, cool. Do you have any minus ones? Like you come out which side of 0 you're on, and that's the benefit to the roll. Instead of having some of these like psychic daisy chains in the old game where it's like, oh, we're plus 4 to hit and a wound automatically, and like there was all these ways to crank up your already pretty respectable shooting. And then suddenly you've got guys that just don't miss, like ever. Now, I mean, again, ones always miss, and that's always a thing. But that's not the important thing now. Now it's your elite forces. If your regular guys hit on 4s, but your elite guys hit on 3s. Now, sometimes some of the opponent's modifiers, you want to have a better chain. You can't stack 50 things like you could on your earlier troops. So what you do is, instead of stacking 50 things on your guys, you get better guys to begin with and go ahead and augment them a little bit. It ends up being a little more cost efficient, but also it allows people like myself, who we just sometimes dig getting the cool guys on the field. That's the thing, is I want to see some of the goofy troops that people are always like, no, I never take that stuff because they're you can always get twice the number of the basic grunt, and that ends up being a better deal in the long run. I hate that. If somebody wants to be able to field a bunch of really cool elite stuff, as long as it behaves like cool elite stuff and not just, you paid twice as much for something that's doing half as much as your troops. As long as that stays kind of in progress and like it maintains that kind of mentality, I love the idea of only having a plus or minus one, because it's going to force people, in my opinion, it's going to force people to start taking some more elite forces, instead of just flooding the fields with grunts, because weight of dice was more important after you've added a few benefits or bonuses to them. That's my opinion. I'm sticking to it. Alright, so I'm actually getting kind of long in the tooth here. I'm going to take a few seconds to do my victory lap around the Migos bases. And by that, when that's done, I should have enough black left over to at least do the 3 guns on the gunfighting Migo. Yeah, so, that is not the right brush. That's what I get. Grabbing the wrong brush to do stuff with. But yeah, so I'm just really excited. I think the new 40K is gonna end up being a little more user friendly. Just by some of the wording that we're seeing on throwing brushes everywhere. Just by seeing some of the wording that we're seeing on some of the rules in place, I think that they're really trying their best to make the rules not very wiggly. And by wiggly, I mean, like, if someone reads it, they can't go, well, it doesn't say that I can do this. Doing this sounds perfectly legal. Actually, that's gonna be like the title of one of my episodes, is perfectly legal. Those two words together, when uttered at a game table, normally are uttered by the rules lawyering jerk. Think about it. There's been lots of times where you've had someone say, oh yeah, that's okay, you can do that. Or, I found it in the rules, let's do this. But the first time that you have to do the adverb of perfectly in front of legal, you just know that guy is doing it to rub it in that someone else at the table thinks that they shouldn't be doing it. Possibly even in the case of like a role-playing game, possibly even the dungeon master or the game master or whatever. It's just one of my least favorite terms. There was a guy who used to game with us a long time ago that he has since fallen off the world. But they constantly, it would be like his favorite phrase was, well, what I'm doing here is perfectly legal, so you can't really complain. And just you wanted to be like, I'm not complaining, I just want to box your ears for being a jerk. As you can tell, I am not one. I do not have much patience in me for rules lawyers. Never have. I'm okay with rules. I want a rules lawyer on my playtest team. I want somebody to show me that my rules have got flaws, or find that combo that, we need to seal that up before the regular other players get a hold of it. Whatever the case may be, that's what I appreciate a rules layer at my playtest table. My actual game table or a tournament, not at all. I don't want someone to, if I'm the DM, I don't want someone to interrupt me with, but the rules actually say, or a player who has figured out how to min-max his way to gaming success, and you look at him and say, no, I don't think you can do that. And they go, it's perfectly legal for me to do these 3 things at once, and blah, 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 blah. I read on the internet, So yeah, I don't have a whole lot of patience for that kind of gaming. You know me, if you've watched this channel before, my whole thing is positivity in gaming. I want people to be happy. I want people to leave, even if they got their butt kicked at the table. I want them to leave smiling and go, "Man, that was a fun game. I can't believe I got my butt kicked." And if you've got to put up with somebody who is the perfectly legal games lawyering type, or God's forbid you ever have somebody who utters this phrase at you, it's not my, quote unquote, it is not my responsibility for my opponent to have fun. If someone ever utters that statement, which I mention that statement because it is ingrained in my memory forever, because we had a local gamer, that was his honest to goodness stance, was, you know, playing a game is one thing and enjoying a game is another, and it is not his responsibility to make sure that his opponents are having a good time. And when questioned about this, that particular gamer, his response was basically, I don't know what my opponent likes. I don't know if my opponent likes a fair game. I don't know if my opponent likes to cheat. I don't know if my opponent only ever likes to win. I'm not going to take a dive for them. So, therefore, it is only the responsibility of this gamer to understand what they have to do to enjoy their game, and that the other people, they'll figure theirs out. Right out. Hated it, hated that, hated the statement. It is one of those catchphrases that every time that one of our local people that know what's going on utter it, just want to strangle them. All right, so time is about up. I got everybody base code. Oh, hey, I was going to put that. Oh, man. Is that blue dry? Nah, that blue's not dry enough yet. Never mind. All right, so yeah, so we got some base coating done, got some bases, some base coating, and some bases coated. Yes, and told some fun stories and talked about 40K and talked about how we got some fun things in the future for miniatures gamers. I hope that you had a good time listening to my hobby ramblings, and sorry that my microphone got a little weird there in the middle, and hopefully next time we'll have the two-way camera and camera thing, because maybe I'll afford my my second Logitech at that time. So here in a second we'll just see you over at the other place. Bye.
All right, well, that was fun. I know I didn't get a lot done because I ended up drawing a lot more than painting, but I hope you guys enjoyed the chit chat and enjoyed what we managed to get finished on the models. But either way, I'm glad that I can at least do the hobby stuff again, and who knows, maybe here shortly we'll have an extra special hobby episode where I'll be able to start painting some figures that you've never seen before, or show off some stuff from other companies. I know that there's a couple of companies that have contacted me to possibly do some like unboxing and painting videos for them. So we'll see if we can't make that happen. And if you know of anybody or any company who is looking for that kind of thing, feel free to throw my name in their hat, and we'll see what happens. No matter what, though, you know how I am. I'm just happy to be doing this, happy to be, painting and writing and designing for a living, and it gives me a chance to step away and enjoy myself, even for just a couple hours a week. And that's what I want out of you. Between now and the next episode, I want you to step away from your regular life for a couple hours. Just take a breath, have some fun, and play some games. We'll see you next week.